What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters. I'm David Wilson, and today we're going to try something a little bit new. This is going to be a live coding focused stream. Now, today we're not going to do a whole lot of coding, but we are going to do some investigation into some things that we talked about last Friday. So I'll talk about that a bit more as people start filing in. Hey, Garjola and Anton. I'm assuming your name is pronounced Anton. I'm not an expert at reading Cyrillic. All right, so last Friday we talked about the situation with EXWM and the fact that the project itself hasn't really been in maintenance for a while. It's been over a year since there's been commits there. And I said that I wanted to try to do something about that. And now I sort of caveated that by saying that I don't have a whole lot of free time to spend like trying to, maintain the project myself or anything like that. But I did want to start looking into the technical details behind EXWM and to understand more about how the project works. And maybe since we're all going to be here looking at it together, then we can all learn something about it. And then maybe the System Crafters community can try to help contribute to the EXWM project and fix some issues and eventually, make the project better. So we're going to try out the stream today, see how it goes. I'm streaming on both YouTube and Twitch. You may be watching a recording of this right now, but there's plenty of people here who are watching it live, which is great. So the goal would be to try and stream doing something like this once a week, in addition to the stream on Fridays, because the Friday stream is going to remain being like more a community stream where we're going to be doing discussions and whatnot. But this particular stream theoretically on Wednesdays would be more project focused. So we'll have some project that we're working on each week, trying to make progress. And I'm going to try not to do too much outside of the stream so that you can see the whole process going from start to, well, I wouldn't say finish, but from me learning the project to me being able to contribute to the project, and maybe the other people who are watching also getting involved as well, either through contributing by talking on the chat, or even contributing to the project or contributing to the notes that I write as a part of this process. So to that effect, I want to show you the, let's see, projects, sites, wiki site. I'm going to put this in a file called EXWM hacking on the wiki. So if you haven't been to the System Crafters wiki before, it's at wiki.systemcrafters.net. And this page doesn't exist yet. It will exist as soon as I check it in and it gets pushed to the site. But there's going to be a page under the Emacs section called EXWM hacking. I'll have a link to that in the description below, so you can check that out after the stream is over. But the goal is to try to get an understanding, high-level understanding of the EXWM code base today, maybe also the XELB code base, which is basically the library that EXWM uses to communicate to the X Windows system. And then from there, we can try to look into some bugs and maybe try to attempt to fix some of them. But I will say today, we're probably just going to be getting an overview. And I tend to spend maybe somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours on this and not really go too far with that. So we'll see how much we can get done in that amount of time. Hello to Rajath, Star7, Thokal, Drashal, Gan, Daigo, Edis, Apurv, Appenzel, Fixed, Andrat, I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, but I appreciate you being here. The Pinback, thank you all for the kind words. So, yeah, I'm not really expecting these streams to have as much viewership as the real streams on Fridays, but I'm glad to see so many people are here this morning, so thank you all for being here. Hi, Rui. All right, so let's start taking some notes here. So let's see, repositories. Hey, Benoit. Drashal says, I wonder how hard it would be to port EXWM to Wayland. Well, the problem is that Wayland is a completely different windowing system. Not exactly sure how you would call that, but the protocol is entirely different. The libraries are entirely different. So you basically have to rewrite everything about how EXWM operates. So it would basically be a new package altogether. You could probably refactor it and make it more generic and then retarget it to Wayland, but I think it would be difficult as it stands. Hey, ZW Marduk. Benoit is connecting from IRC. That's good. Okay, so let's see. Repository links. I'm just going to put some links here to the repositories. First of all, let's get the EXWM repository. I'll grab that really quickly. And then we're going to grab the XELB repository. So I'll go grab that really quickly. So XELB. So these are the two main packages that we're concerned with as far as EXWM is concerned. Asutosh asks, the ohm on prompt looked awesome. How do you do that? I just have a character in my prompt for eShell. So if you look at my configuration, config.davidwheel.com/emacs, the link's in the description, you can see how I have my prompt set up in the eShell section. Okay, so now let's see, EXWM overview. So this is completely unplanned, unscripted. We're just going to go through this whole thing. You're going to see me trying to figure things out real time. So if it seems a little bit, you know, disorganized, that's because we're doing it live. We're doing this for real. Okay. So we're not going to look at it through the GitHub repository. We're actually going to look at it through the actual code. So let me split this down here, and then we can jump to the code base. I've already got the code cloned to my projects path. All right. Hey, Mary. And Supa and Glenn. Marduk says EGLOT versus LSP. Well, I like EGLOT a lot for what it tries to accomplish, which is basically having a more native integration into Emacs, but I've had better luck with LSP mode recently. Garjola says, if it seems disorganized, it's because it's disorganized, but who said that was a problem? I don't know. I have quality standards for myself, so. John says, does anybody know about a good standalone window manager alternatives to EXWM? Emacs takes up a lot of RAM, and EXWM often hangs, so I'm looking for a window manager to use when I'm not using Emacs. Well, you should look into maybe StumpWM, but there's plenty of others out there, DWM, i3, etc. It really just depends on what you want for your window management workflow. So we have a nice little overview here of the files that are involved. Let me just copy all this really quick and drop it in. So the files, let's see how this prints out. Okay, we've got all this information here. So maybe what I'll do is do a little block selection and try to delete the stuff off the front. Boom, okay. Garjola says, you may be the best disorganized Emacs hacker out there. How's that for a quality standard? I don't know, I can't say that would be true, but I appreciate it. All right, so let's clean this up a little bit. Let me see if I can turn on keycast mode, if it works. Yesterday I was having trouble with it. Great. Did I fix that part of my config? Let's check it really quick. Glenn mentions Xmonad, i3, Qtile, awesome. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of possibilities for that. A4V says, speaking of XELB, I was just setting up EXWM, watching your series. I get an error saying XELB connection failed, no protocol specified. Usually that happens because you need to have, there are security protocols, I think, for Xorg or X11 or whatever. And sometimes you need to run a command like this xhost command. to disable access control. I'm not exactly sure what this does. All I know is that for me to get EXWM to work correctly in Geeks, I had to do this. Maybe even in other distros. I can't remember how far back I had to add this, but this line is what allows me to launch EXWM without let me put this here. It allows me to do that without the error that you see there. Penrose is another good WM that Marduk is recommending. Okay, so I was looking at keycast mode. See, this is how we're going to start getting disorganized. I'm going to get lost in multiple tangents. So I just want to check to make sure I get this set up right. The thing is weird is that it seems that keycast does not have a function called keycast mode line update. Have I actually, let's see, keycast, whoops. Require keycast. Now does it have that? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, yesterday I had some really strange issues with keycast. Benoit says, I vote for a disorganized festival. That's an interesting idea. Let me try to add this hook, which it can't really be the case, can it? Anyway, whatever. Keycast may start working, it may not work, so if it doesn't work, I'm sorry for that. Okay, back to the point. So, we have, how many files is this here? Probably about 11 or 12 eLisp files. We can start looking at the exwm.el file first, just to get an idea of what's in there. So I'm gonna try to take these, excuse me, and make little subsections to say what each file is about. May not be necessary, but we'll start with that just to see what we find out. So obviously we got the header here. We're pulling in a lot of other parts of this package. General definitions of custom variables. Restarting commands, got some auto load set up. Some helper functions for updating certain things like window titles, etc. Glenn says, I just set up EXWM after watching your video series, now purely in Emacs. That's awesome. Great. All right, so there's a lot of stuff here that's like helper functions. A lot of update functions. Many update functions used internally. And what are those called? Let's see. There's some XELB requests that are here specifically. So XELB is the, well, let's look that up actually. XELB. Maybe we can get some definitions going in this document. How about I drop down here and let's see, definitions. XELB. So this is the C language binding, which is a replacement for XELB. But it doesn't say exactly what it's a binding for. There's a tutorial. That should be helpful. People wanting to implement higher level applications use XELB util. XELB is built atop an XML description of the X-Core protocol and common extension protocols called XML XELB. Okay, that's interesting. So it sounds like this is just a generated wrapper library for the actual protocol for X11 or Xorg. I need to get the terminology right on that too. They say it anywhere in here, like they don't say Xorg. They don't say X11. Okay, they call it X Window System Protocol. Cool. Good. I'm going to try to use the right terminology so that nobody gets confused here. All right, so XELB. Yeah, Garjola, I think what is happening is that XELB is probably a wrapper of the protocol similarly to XCB. And it's also, both of them are generated from the XML description of the protocol. So it's probably very similar, definitely an intent. So XELB API is documented. I think this must be the C API. Yeah, it looks like the C API. It might be useful to know about that because there's probably some similarities between that and the API that's exposed by XELB. What is XCB and why does it exist? It's an alternative to XLib. Designed to solve the problems and provide a base for toolkit implementation, direct low protocol level programming, lightweight emulation of commonly used portions of the XELB API. That's kind of nice. I actually have a little bit of description of the X Windows system protocol. Develop with one major goal, flexibility. Lower levels provide the tools required to draw windows, handle user input, allow drawing graphics using colors. Separate the system into two parts, a client that decides what to do and a server that actually draws on the screen and reads user input in order to send it to the client for processing. So the server is what draws and the client is kind of the driver for what's happening in the Windows system, it sounds like. It's a complete opposite of what is used to when dealing with clients and servers. Yeah, that's what is a little bit confusing about that. In our case, the user sits near the machine controlled by the server, while the client might be running on a remote machine. The server controls the screens, mouse, and keyboard. A client may connect to the server, request that it draws a window, and ask the server to send it any input the user sends to those windows. What? A client may connect to the server, request that it draws a window. So why would a client request that a window be drawn? I mean, my understanding would be that the client is interacting with the server and the user does something that causes a process to be launched on the machine where the server is running, and then that causes a window to be created. So if anybody has insights on that, that'd be helpful. Several clients may connect to a single X server. While input is sent by the user to some Windows server, sends a message to the client, controlling this window for processing. The client decides what to do with this input. So when input is sent by the user to some window, which in my opinion, that would be coming from the client. You using the client, you're clicking windows in the client. I think I've got that backwards though, because the server says that's where things are being drawn. So the client actually isn't the one that's being... Yeah, so the client isn't where things are being drawn. The server is where things are being drawn. X servers were extended to allow clients running on the local machine with more optimized access to the server. Sure. Let's see if anybody says anything in the chat here. So, I mean, if you know anything about the daemon model in, or the server model, I suppose, in Emacs, it's sort of a similar thing where you have like a server that handles most of the actual logic of everything, and then you have a client that connects to that server. But there's a bit of a difference here because in Emacs, the client actually does the rendering and the server does all the sort of logic and processing, I believe. But in X, it sounds like it's a different thing. So the client doesn't render. The server controls the screens, mouse, and keyboard, while the client might be running on a remote machine. Yeah, it still doesn't make sense, but for the purpose of what we're doing today, we don't really need to understand that well. If anybody has any insights, please feel free to chime in. So we have an asynchronous model for programming. Unlike conventional computer programs that carry some serial nature, a GUI program usually uses an asynchronous programming model, event-driven programming, of course. Program sits idle, waiting for events. Okay, so this is typical UI system model. Anytime you click or press a key, then some event handler takes what you did and responds to it, either by running some code or maybe redrawing the screen. Okay, basic XCB notions. XCB has been created to eliminate the need for programs to actually implement the X protocol layer. Low-level access to the server. A client using any implementation of XCB may talk with any X server. So there's a connection to the X server. Structure is a structure representing the connection we have open with a given X server. That makes sense. So you basically have a data structure in memory that holds on to the information. So this is stuff that's probably specific to the XCB library. So probably this isn't really necessary to us, but there may be some details in here that would be useful as time goes on. So what I'm going to do is just grab this, a link to this tutorial. Let's say the XCB tutorial. Wow, this thing is really taking a long time to propagate messages. Jeez, dude. That was a lot that just popped in at once. Garjola says, actually, XELB just requires xcb.el. The client are the apps. That's interesting. Yeah, you might be right about that, Benoit. Star7 says, when I learned Xorg, its client server confused me too. Benoit says, the client are the apps. They know what they want to draw. They ask the X server to draw them in the right place. Okay, that does make sense. Thanks, Marcio, for the 25 Brazilian reals. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. Well, it's my pleasure. Dan says, an X client and server terminology are reversed. Is there a way to draw a diagram in Emacs? A picture might help to get a clearer idea. There is, but I'm not really good at doing that. Server got the drivers and access to the graphics adapter, keyboard, mouse, etc. Server capture mouse or keyboard events and send events to the client. Okay, that makes more sense. So basically, the client is the application that's using the X APIs, and it has to have an event loop to deal with things that are coming from the server. The server knows what's happening as sending events out. Let's see. For UML diagrams, you can use plant UML. Benoit says, one usage people may not know, but the server can sit somewhere on your network and you can set your display to the IP address for rendering. Yeah, well, I guess if you've ever used if you've used the X server implementations in WSL or the Windows subsystem for Linux, I think this is pretty common. You have to use an actual like localhost basically for your display setting. I hope this chat thing is not going to be a problem because I don't have a better way to have a merged view of the chat. Let me see if I can pull up at least the YouTube chat on another screen to make sure I'm not missing things. Okay. How did I get to this bit? Whoops, what did I just do there? Yeah, Shraz. Yeah, you can definitely use artist mode. You're probably going to hear an echo for a second. Once I can pause this stupid video. There we go. Yeah, Shraz. Pause, dude. Yeah, you can definitely use artist mode. You're probably going to hear an echo for a second. I keep trying to pause my own video and it's caused me problems. Yeah, so definitely a long delay on chat. Okay, there we go. Nice to have you back here, Ashraz. I need your help, as always. So, getting back to it. So, as what the folks in the chat told me, the client-server model is more like the application that you're running in Xorg or in the X Windows system is the client to the X server. So the events are coming from the X server for things like keyboard, mouse, etc. And then the application decides what to do with them, and then the application may send requests to the X server to draw things on the screen, like, you know, buttons or text or things like that. All right, so XCB itself is the C-level API for interacting with the Xorg protocol. So let's see, X window system. This is the client server system, which handles drawing to the screen, mouse, keyboard, input, etc. You communicate with it via an XML-based protocol. And I think there was a link to that protocol. Hey, Minican. So, protocol. I think there was a link maybe on the previous page. It's the XML XCB. There's a protocol description format. Okay, so this is like a spec format here. This is XML files that describe the X Windows System protocol, which can be used for generating bindings like XCB. And I think this is probably the same thing that's being used in EXWM. We'll take a look at that in a minute. All right, so I'm going to keep a link to this as well. So let's put this in. So XML XCB format for describing the X window system protocol. So some of these things are going to be useful later once we start to get more in depth with our understanding of things. Okay, so maybe what we can do really quickly then, I know we're sort of going backwards a little bit, but let's actually look at XELB. Because I think that's not going to take very long, because my understanding, and as some other people said in IRC earlier, that the XELB library seems to be generated, and I believe that the README even says as much. XELB is a pure ELISP implementation of the X11 protocol based on the XML description files from XCB project. It features object-oriented API, permits a certain degree of concurrency. So apparently it also, oh, that's for Emacs-24, so we're way past that now, thankfully. Here's a make file. Protopath, XCB proto. So apparently you have to pull down some XCB proto files to a peer directory of your XELB project, and then it seems that elclient.el. elclient.el. Okay, this elclient.el seems to be the code generator for XELB. And it seems like it's implementing an XML reader because you see like node name, node attribute, node type. All right, so generates ELISP libraries for XCB or X11 protocol for the protocol with the, was it elclient.el file. Driven by the make file. So now, I don't think we really need to look at that in depth. If we ever needed to fix this, that'd be one thing, but I'm gonna guess that this is probably fairly stable at this point because it's been used for a while. But what you can see is there's a lot of different sub-modules here for different things, like let's say the system tray. So being able to set up the system tray where you have icons sort of like this up here, which is kind of interesting if you think about it, because maybe there's a way you can implement a better system tray with EXWM. Potentially even with this XELB library, you could implement a panel in Emacs-Lisp, like an actual panel, sort of like Polybar. But I don't know. Now that I say that, that sounds like something that might be interesting to do, but maybe some other people can help start that. All right, so some usage tips for this library. Interesting that that is added here, because if this code is generated, I would expect that you wouldn't have, handwritten notes. A lot of usage of the common Lisp APIs, it seems, in Emacs-Lisp, because you get things like CL def method, def class, etc. That's not pure Emacs-Lisp. This is sort of like the common Lisp compatibility layer. This is probably a macro, so if I use Control-H-O, it'll tell me about def class here. And that is coming from, well, it's coming from whatever EIEIO is. Let me check what that is. Enhanced implementation of Emacs interpreted objects. Okay, so this is more like an object-oriented library for Emacs-Lisp. So it's not exactly Common Lisp per se, but it may be inspired by Common Lisp. I've actually seen a lot of weird errors from EXWM related to EIEIO before, so that explains it. Yeah, so it seems to be inspired by Common Lisp object system. Is that what it is? CLOS. So there's some things that aren't supported. So anyway, that's something to know about. Yeah, Wind Up Boy says EIEIO is an implementation of Common Lisp object system. All right, so let's get out of this file. Anything else interesting? There's a types file. Some of these things actually, here's what I think. Maybe if we look at the make file, there's a subset of these files that are being generated, and the others are probably handwritten that use the core generated file. So let's say, okay, it's interesting. So certain EL files depend on XEB xfixes. There's a random file. Yeah, so whenever these dependencies are being set, it's sort of invoking this XEB whatever.el to generate the file for that, it seems. That's pretty clever. Okay. Get out of there. So is this one is one of the ones is that, excuse me, is this one of the ones that's generated? Does not look like it. So what about X fixes? XCB X fixes. Okay, so yeah, you can tell which ones are generated by looking at this. This file was generated by EL client. So if I were to use consult, or this is, I don't know, what command is this? Control HK, consult ripgrep. So I'm gonna use consult ripgrep, and I'm gonna type in EL client, and we should be able to see all the files that are generated. So, oh, okay. X screensaver present XEV record.el ge.el. So a few of these are generated, it seems. Cool. And are those mentioned in the make file? I don't see the EV one here. Anyway, not that important. But what we do know is that this make file can generate the ELISP files for communicating with the X server or the X Windows System Protocol. And you probably won't have to do that very often. So let's see. Is there an entry point? XELB.el. Okay, so there's a nice little description here about how it works. X11 is a network transparent protocol. Transport over the network. Considering Emacs is powerful enough to do network communication, it is also possible to use Emacs to send, receive those X11 messages. Here we fully exploit the asynchronous feature of network connections in Emacs, making XELB concurrent in a sense, which is cool. So because there is a request response pattern, EXWM doesn't have to wait on the X server to respond before it does other things. So this is why EXWM even works at all, is because whenever you send a request, eventually the server will send a response or will send an error back. So in that period of time, you could be doing other things because you're just basically waiting for a message to return. So the XEB project was created to describe these protocols as XML files, which are language neutral, can be used to generate language-specific bindings. X messages are represented as classes, and their methods are provided to translate them to from byte arrays conveniently. Santiago. Santiago asks, why does everything in here is blue? The background, the color scheme, the chat, your shirt, your eyes. Well, the chat, I didn't make that blue. It just happened to be blue. But everything else, maybe I like blue. Interfaces are defined in xcb.el. Please refer to that file on how to use them. So let's say core interfaces are defined in xcb.el. There's utility libraries. Most of the other files are either X11 core. You know, let's just copy that whole thing because it's actually pretty helpful. Is that gonna work? Okay, cool. Do not load this library. Load xcb.el instead. Well, that's interesting. I guess they just put this here to provide an entry point because the library itself is called XELB. But XCB is the one that is wanted. Provides methods for XCB connection, an opaque class encapsulating all information concerning an X connection. The most frequently used methods are, well, that's nice to have that. So connect, disconnect makes sense. There's request, Request checked, request unchecked. Not sure if that has to do with like validation of messages or something else. And also there's a reply, if you need to reply to the server, I'm guessing. Ashraz says, on the fly capture template for the code venture. Well, you know, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we'll do that at some point. So, event handling, we got the message type for events. Also flushing, I'm guessing if you've got messages you're trying to send, you probably need to flush them every once in a while to make sure that they get sent by some certain time. Generate ID, I'm guessing that is probably for the requests that you send. Usually with RPC protocols that are asynchronous, you have to have some kind of ID so that messages can be correlated. Like if you send a request, then the server has to send you a reply that has the same ID so that the client knows which message the response is in reference to. XC extension for generate ID when IDs are used up. That sounds scary. I wonder what the size of the possible number set is for that. All right, connection timeout. Okay, so this is a pretty core thing here. It's like the class defining the XCB connection. There's a lot of information here. We're not going to go too far in depth on any of this. We're just looking at it a little bit to see what's here. Auth information. This is probably where that X host thing that I mentioned before comes into play. You have to authenticate with the X server to communicate with it. Display to socket. That's cool. So basically, you're converting a display string into a socket address. Parse display, create auth info. So there's just a lot of stuff here that's sort of protocol specific, which makes sense because this is the protocol library. Some of this eLisp code gets a little bit deep, it seems. Disconnect. Yeah, so the EIEIO thing is something I've not looked at at all in Emacs-Lisp, and I haven't really used CLOS either. So the more we get into this code, the more I'll probably have to learn about that, which is good, actually. Okay. So it definitely seems like core methods here, and then everything else we see is just helper libraries. On top of that, I wonder what's in GLX. Does it have, maybe it's just for setting a OpenGL context or something inside of an X window. Yeah, visual configs. I doubt we'll see any actual rendering functions in here. Yeah, create new context I saw. Let's go to the bottom. Some kind of query stuff, compression parameters. Filters. Okay. Interesting. And what else we got here that's interesting? So render for displays. This is definitely something you're probably using with EXWM if you have multiple monitors. Get set screen size. Some of this may actually be useful too for getting some of the information that you would normally get using XRender. So this could be used for scripting probably against XRender. And in fact, you could probably use this, I'm just guessing here, you could probably use this to implement something like auto render inside of Emacs-Lisp, which might be pretty cool, to do automatic display configurations whenever you connect to a specific machine. Like if you use a laptop and you want to automatically set up the right displays depending on which displays are available, then you might be able to use this for that. But then again, you could also just, you know, launch XRender as a command line command and scrape its output if you want to do that too. Which is, I think, what AutoRender and other programs like that do. Okay, so let's just get back to EXWM itself. Yeah, I didn't edit that, did I? Yes, kill it anyway. Kill, kill, kill. Okay, so we're going to go to exwm.el again. So let's just hop back. We're not going to worry too much about writing down the things about XELB. Let's just say a small portion of the files are generated but many are helper libraries for specific parts of the XCB protocol. It's not really the XCB protocol. Let's just call it the X11. Okay, so we'll go back to that at some other point, but for now, let's look at EXWM. So still, I haven't found what I would consider the best entry point yet. I think EXWM init would be the thing for that. So here is the definition of EXWM init. And it's interesting that they use CLDefun here, which is for defining a function sort of like a common Lisp function. But I thought that was only for when you have specific types of parameters you want to pass into these functions. But maybe there's another reason for it. If we go look at CLDefun. Glenn, we posted the dailies video last week, so you should be able to see it there. So we are looking at this really quickly. Autoloaded macro defined inside of CL max. Like normal defun, except arglist allows full common Lisp conventions and body is implicitly surrounded by CL block. Okay, so CL block may actually have something to do with why this was used. I don't know what that does, but I'm guessing it must be setting some context around the code. So if we look at def macro CL block, is that? Okay. Define a lexically scoped block in named name. Okay, that's cool. So you're basically defining, like it says, a lexically scoped block, but it's a named block, which is cool. So not very important for what we're doing right now, but CLDefun definitely seems to be related to, no, def macro CLDefun. So it will let you pass extra things as parameters, like I think aux is something that's not part of Emacs Lisp, and key is also not something that's part of Emacs Lisp. I think usually we only have optional or rest inside of, yeah, so like rest like this. But if you use CLDefun, apparently it wraps function definitions to give you more possibilities for parameters you might want to use for that. So that does make sense why they would probably want to use this here, at least for the way of setting up lexical scoping, probably in the way that the CL, the Common Lisp library, expects. All right, so this basically takes care of initialization. And let me pull back my... Garjola says, this may be a residue from times when eLisp lexical scope was not available. You might be right about that. I thought that too. Let's see. Wind Up Boy says, a block is a named scope in Lisp. By default, it's nil, but in CL, this can be used with goto. Interesting. Okay, also return from. So is it like some kind of... Ah, okay. Yeah. I know what you mean. All right, so EXWM init. Let's see other files. Let's just get this stuff out of the way so I can write some things. So EXWM init is the entry point for setting up EXWM and connecting to the X window system server. All right, so what we see here is okay, so it's checking to see whether we're running under X windows, which you can check by frame p function. Okay, that tells it's a frame, but I guess it must return something. Okay, so if you use frame p, it's not strictly a predicate because it's actually returning the type of windowing system that's being used, so it will return X if it's an X frame. But obviously, if you're using this in a Boolean-like setting, any value that's not nil is going to be true. So it still works as a predicate. Hey, Dolfo. So all right, cool. And if there's already an EXWM connection variable, which we can check right now because I'm in EXWM, that seems to have the actual XCB connection instance for this. If it's already there, it's going to say the EXWM is already running, which makes sense. And we have the CL return from EXWM init, which is like what Windup Boys said. When we have the CL defun here, it apparently creates a common Lisp block scope named EXWM init. And this CL return from allows you to do a local exit of this function, apparently. So you can exit early without having to go through the rest of this. So I guess the point there is that you don't have to do more funky looking code to deal with the function executing all the way to the end. You have a local return that allows you to just jump out of this block of code, which is not usually the case in Lisps, unless you have a feature like this. Or I'll say in normal function definitions, this is not the case. I think that even Scheme has stuff that you could use to do non-local exits. I mean, obviously continuations allow you to do that, but that's a little bit more of a advanced case. All right, so we're doing a condition case on the error, if there's any error. Let's see. Okay, so this is the, let's see, what does condition case do in this case? This is a macro. Whoops. Regain control when error is signaled, executes body form. Okay, so the body form gets executed first, and there's a variable for the error. Okay, that makes sense. So, whoops. Let me pull back the window config here. There we go. All right, so we're looking at the condition case. So we're defining a local variable called error that the error will go into, but this is the actual body. And as this executes, any errors are going to be caught and handled down here somewhere. That's the first time I've seen that, I think. And then all of this is sort of the initialization. So we're going to try to connect using the XEB library or the XELB library and store that into EXWM connection. Now, process query on exit flag. I think that is something in Emacs Lisp for whenever Emacs is exiting. Specify if query is needed for process when Emacs is exited. So slot value EXWM connection process nil. Okay, so it's basically saying don't query to make sure you're sure you want to exit. But maybe later they set it up so it does that. Set process query on exit flag. Okay, I don't know how that ends up coming into play, but I think it would matter at some point. And slot value. This is another EIEIO thing, it seems. Windup Boy says, in CL, this kind of explicit use of the block is hidden behind the function definition protocol, but in Emacs Lisp, they need to be explicit because the idioms are a bit different. Yeah, makes sense. So I'm not sure what ICCM is. Let's check that out really quickly. Ah, come on. There we go. Okay, and how about the relation to XELB? This is probably not the appropriate website to look at this on. Let's jump back. Maybe this is the right place. Doesn't seem directly related. Let's check this out. Oh, okay. Let me jump. Here we go. This is probably the right one. All right. I think this is the thing related to... blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what is this, like a specification for how messages should be configured? Okay. Set selection owner. Can you explain to me what this is about? Introduction. I don't see anything here. Inter-client communications. Ah. So inter-client, I would assume that means communications between different clients, which means different applications that are interacting with the X protocol. Selection mechanism, cut buffers, window manager, session manager, manipulation of shared resources. So it's like a multi-client situation here, I guess. Required conventions. Okay, many of the conventions use atoms, unique names that clients can use to communicate information to each other. They can be thought of as a bundle of octets, like a string, but without an encoding being specified. Elements are not necessarily ASCII characters, and no case folding happens. That's interesting. Fixed size representation was needed. Protocol request, intern. Oh, okay, so you're creating interns for specific atoms. Okay, that makes sense. So basically, you're creating an identifier for a specific atom instead of using the string itself whenever you're communicating it. 32-bit value. Whoops. Okay, so yeah, there's some things here like WM hints. I don't know, if you've been around Linux long enough, you've probably seen stuff like these in some context, I guess. This may have to do with like, so selections in X, I think, or something like, if you have a selection, you can paste that selection somewhere else without explicitly copying it, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe this has something to do with that. But let's just drop this here. Definitions, ICCCM. This seems to be a set of conventions for communication between clients in the X Windows system. I'll just drop a link to this documentation, and we got it here because we were looking at, yeah, the EWMH. So what's that? Extended Window Manager hints. All right, so EWMH, Extended Window Manager hints, and interactions between window managers, applications, and the utilities that form a part of the desktop environment. It builds on ICCCM, which defines window manager interactions. Okay, so that's a nicer way to explain that. Describes window manager interactions at a low level. Does not provide ways to implement many features that modern desktop users expect. So, an extended set of conventions for modern desktop environments. And they have some different things here. C non-ICCCM. It's too hard for me to say that. My tongue just does not cooperate. ICCCM. It's called, yeah. Okay, I think I've seen some of these things before too inside of the EXWM code base, or at least in the logs. Okay, so these must be, let's see, what does it say up here? These are properties. Whenever the spec speaks about sending a message to the root window, it is understood that the client is supposed to create a client message event with the specified contents and send it by using a send event request with the following arguments. And these are properties. But these are not messages. These are properties, right? And related messages. Okay, so this is a message. These arrays contain all X windows managed by the window manager. Net client list has initial mapping order starting with the oldest window. Properties should be set and updated by the window manager. That's interesting. So definitely this seems to be some of the core information you would need for implementing a window manager, because there's a lot of stuff here that is related to window management. Some window managers have a showing the desktop mode, which windows are hidden and the desktop background is displayed and focused. If a window manager supports the net showing desktop hint, it must set it to a value of 1 when the window manager is showing the desktop mode and a value of 0 if the window manager is not in this mode. Interesting. I'm guessing that that's just information for other clients to look at and not something that causes a behavior to happen inside of the X window system. The window manager may choose to ignore this client message. So who's the one that's going to send it? That's weird. Close window. Pagers wanting to close a window must send a net window close client message request to the root window. Window manager must attempt to close the window specified. Okay. So probably the window manager is the root window, and then it's the one receiving this. So that would make sense. Hey, David. Interesting. So this is for EWMH. So assumption. Let's just write an assumption here. The window manager is the root window, and anything in this document that describes the messages handled by the root window are actually handled by the window manager. And please feel free to correct that assumption if it's wrong. And also I want to say, if you watch this and you see anything here that's wrong, or maybe you want to add some extra information to the document, please feel free to send a pull request to the github.com/systemcrafters wiki-site repo. And whenever this video is done, the file will be here under content /emacs/ I think it's EXWM-hacking.org. So if you want to contribute to this, please do. I'm trying to figure out the right way to approach having other people also contribute information, because it may break the continuity of the streams if there's new information in here since the last time I looked at it, especially if someone went in and filled in a whole bunch of stuff. So it may derail us a little bit. So maybe there's a different way we can handle this, but I really do want other people to contribute to this whole process. So maybe it's something we'll have to figure out over time. But for now, let's just say you could send a PR and I'll try to figure out how to deal with it. Okay. So back to where we are here. I think we got into the ICCCM and EWMH thing by looking at this. Hi, the cashew trader. And we're initializing both of these. So apparently there are some methods for these inside of the libraries we saw in XEB. Let's see, XCB. Seems like I killed all those buffers. XELB, ICCCM, and what is it, init? And this, it's kind of interesting to look at because now we see some of this stuff about atoms. So this method must be called before using any other methods in this module. Makes sense. And XEB atom WM protocols, is that a variable? Yeah. Oh, okay. So that seems to be the interned number for this particular atom, WM protocols. That makes sense. It's predefined, I think. Let atoms, It's looping over a list of atoms for ICCCM. So all these particular atoms, it loops over those. And for the number of screens, let's see, intern, that's an Emacs Lisp function. Push onto the atoms list. Okay. Okay, so it's adding more. So per display, it has to add special atoms for that. Number of screens. And then it interns the atoms, which probably calls the protocol function for that, because we did see that there was something about that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it sends a request for intern atom. Yeah, so it probably gets back the value for that, and I would guess it stores it. What I'm curious about is how responses are handled. But maybe, okay, so plus reply makes me think that there must be a function to handle the reply, so what would that be? Do list atom atoms, symbol name atom, var name, it interns that. Set var name, slot value. Oh, okay, this must be synchronous because we don't have any kind of callback. So this must be it's sending a message directly to the protocol and waiting for the response so that it can pull the atom out of this structure that is being returned from this function. There doesn't seem to be any error handling around this either, but maybe that's being handled inside of this function. Let's check that out really quickly. Oh, no, not that one. Request unchecked. It's interesting that there's a plus reply version that I can't find. Request unchecked. Oh, let's just try looking at that anyway. Don't see anything specifically about error handling. Maybe it doesn't matter that much though. Something somewhere is probably handling all this. Wind Up Boy says that def method, if it was CLOS, could have other methods that would be assembled at runtime. Grep for the method name in the code. Let's see, where is it? Grep for the method name in the code. So request unchecked reply. There it is. It's a macro, that's why. That makes sense. Okay. So back to EXWM. All right, so that's interesting. We learned a couple things from that. And then the EMWH. I'm kind of curious of what's in there now because we saw that EMWH is related to... Did I say that wrong? Where is that defined? Defined in... Oh, I didn't see that file, did you? EWMH, because I can't type without dyslexia today, apparently. Hi, Soko. Okay. So now we're looking for the init function here. Hi, Sean. And this one's also doing something. Okay, so it's grabbing Now what's force about? When or force or not net supported. Huh. Wonder why. Maybe this is actually being initialized after EXWM starts up, and that's why we have the intern value for this atom. Let's see, net supported. Uh-huh. Okay, so we have to get that atom. No, wait, hold on. This is a class. This seems to be the way that messages are set up. This seems to be a request. That's like a get property request. It's kind of nice. And then the reply. Property init form atom net supported. So maybe. See ya, Garjola. Thanks for joining today. All right, so I think this must be getting called at some point to grab that value, but let's not worry about that right now. I'm guessing what this means is that if this is nil, this means that this value has not been pulled yet, which probably means that that the EWMH module has not yet been initialized. So if it's nil or set to force, so basically if you want to recycle the initialization, I guess, then you can use the ICCCM init, which probably will not do anything if it's already initialized, which is good. And then for the atoms here, it's also going to intern all those atoms, which should then cause this net supported to be populated, I'm guessing. So basically initializing the modules. Okay, so that makes sense. Let me write that down because that's sort of a key piece of understanding, I think, for startup. Let's get back to the notes. All right, so in EXWM, what I want to say is part of the initialization process is to initialize modules like ICCCM and what was it? EWH, jeez, man. EWMH via functions like XELB, EWMH, and init. These seem to be focused around fetching the IDs for well-known atoms. Once they've been fetched, those subsystems are considered to be initialized. Okay. So back to EXWM init again. All right, so try to register window manager selection. So there's some kind of WMSN acquire function. And what is this? EXWM replace? Or is that a variable? Yeah, oh, okay. Interesting. So there's a variable in EXWM called EXWM replace, which allows you to ask to replace the current window manager. So let's say you're running DWM, and then you try to start up EXWM using EXWM init. If you have this value set to ask, my guess is that you will get asked if you want to replace the existing window manager, and then if you say yes, then maybe it will kick out the other window manager, and then replace it with EXWM. Okay, so back to this file. Kind of interested to see what this function has in it. Okay, so acquire the WMSN selection. So this seems like another atom. Probably in the ICCCM specification, potentially. What about WMSN? Okay. Interesting. Window manager should remove the property whenever a window is withdrawn, but it should leave the property in place when it is shutting down, e.g. in response to losing the ownership of the WMSN manager selection. If we go back to the ICCCM information, WMSN. Okay, communication with the window manager by means of selections. For each screen they manage, window managers will acquire ownership of a selection named WMSN, where N is a screen number, as described in discriminated names. Window managers should comply with the conventions for manager selections described in manager selections. The intent is for clients to be able to request a variety of information or services. Okay. So selection apparently has some specific connotations. Managing shared resources. Manager may support conversion of various targets for that selection. What is... Client that manages a shared resource should take ownership of an appropriate selection, named using the conventions and naming conventions, blah, blah, blah. Selection is, the use of the word selection is kind of weird in this case. There must be a reason for it. Defining of a new atom consumes resources in the server that are not released until the server reinitializes. Arbitrary number of selections, each named by an atom. And what is the naming convention for that? Let's back up. What about naming conventions here? Built-in atoms are separated by an underscore. All right, so let's pop back again. Okay. So anyway, it seems like the window manager, the ownership of window management duties is handled by acquiring the selection. I think that's what the WMSN means here. And the function itself sends a request. Get selection owner is looking for who the owner is already. And I think it must be pulling the owner out of the response here. And then with that information, if there is an owner, it will ask you, and it will set replace. Generates a new ID from the connection. Calls create window. I see. So this is where the root window, so you see here, EXWM root. So we're creating a new root window for EXWM, the window manager. And that's what's happening here. We're using XEB request to create a new window for, well, hold on. Parent is EXWM root. Let me check that out really quick. So EXWM root, what is that? Maybe a function. Did I do the wrong thing? EXWM, oh, okay, here we are. Root window, that must be an ID for the window. I wonder where it gets set. We can find out. So Q EXWM root. I see. So it's happening pretty early in this process. So set EXWM root grabs the root value of the roots list from the EXWM connection. If we look at that, don't actually see anything obvious here in this object. Name roots, okay. I mean, that's a slot probably. Type XCB screen, size, field ref, roots len. I don't know exactly what information is coming out of here, but that's not too much of an important thing right now. Ashra says, did you find net supported? Maybe scroll back down. Yeah, we found where that was happening. At least I think we found it. All right, so back into EXWM.el. And we were looking at the help for WMSN acquire. A couple other things here. Set WM name, we're setting it to EXWM. Set selection owner, WMSO. And new owner must be the ID that we're generating and we're assigning to this window that we're creating. So it's a window that is parented by EXWM root, which is interesting. So I wonder what the root window actually is in this case. Then at the end, it checks what the selection owner is to verify that it actually got set correctly. And if it's not, then it says it could not acquire ownership of WM selection. Also says it needs to wait for the other window manager to terminate. That's interesting. Probably before it starts trying to grab handles of things, it has to wait for the other one to go away. There's a timeout. Let's see. Oh, interesting. So it's trying to like create some geometry. Is it doing that? How does it know? How does this indicate that the other window manager is still alive? When not reply, CL return. Okay, so basically if it gets a response, for some reason that means that the old window manager is still in effect. But okay, so it's get geometry. It's not creating something. It's actually asking for the geometry properties, and the window manager is the one that has to respond to that. So it knows that if it receives a response, then that the previous window manager is still active in handling messages. So I guess that's a pretty good way to do it, because you would assume that any window manager would respond to get geometry. So yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, you have the X window system, and it's sort of like its own little messaging framework, a messaging system. And you have a window manager that attaches itself into the environment, and then these events are just sort of ambient. The request for get geometry just gets picked up by somebody, and that happens to be the window manager, and then a response can be sent back. So as long as somebody's listening and responding to get geometry, then this would return something. And then eventually it would be EXWM's job to do that. Okay. And now it announces its existence after it gains control as the window manager. Client message data, current time. I wonder if this is required. Seems like just a general message. It's a vector that has a current time, the intern for the selection 0, and then the ID of the new owner window, and a couple zeros. Who knows what that is? Client message. Okay, so it's a lot of structures being created here. So a command and a CM, which is client message. So the what if that's the recipient or the sender? And the manager atom, I'm guessing that is for the window manager. No documentation on that symbol. And then the command goes in as the data, the payload of the message. And we're sending an event. The destination is the root window. So maybe it like broadcasts up and then out, potentially. Then, not sure what the no event mask is. Okay. And then eventually it just finally sets itself as the owner. So yeah, it seems like that's just for the WMSN acquire function itself. So that was a lot of stuff just for acquiring the right to be the window manager. But useful information to see, I think. And now after that we have established we're the window manager, we can send change window attributes. Substructure redirect. I don't see anything that makes a whole lot of sense here. What is this event mask? Okay, so that's definitely a mask. CW is that change window? The event mask for the change window set of functions? I wonder. How would I figure that out? XCB. Let's try XCB CW. This is an Xproto. And the docs for this doesn't say anything. This is all generated code. Okay. I guess it's one last final check. Other window manager is running. So if this returns something, for some reason, this means that the other window manager is still running. So it bails out. Otherwise, it starts initializing other things like the layout system, floating windows, workspaces. Workspaces is kind of interesting. Let's go take a look at that. Because I know what it has to do is create a bunch of frames for all the workspaces and then possibly set them up somehow. So init switch map. Okay, that's probably the key map. Modify all X frames parameters, internal border width 0. Modifies Windows System default frame A list for the X Windows System. What is that variable? And that's actually part of Emacs. Windows System dependent default frame parameters. Okay. All right, so basically it's the frame parameters that are used every time a new frame is created. And it seems to be keyed based on the particular Windows system. So this says for X Windows or X Windows System, internal border width should be 0. And what does that do? Internal border. Okay, so that is, we don't have documentation for that one. But does default frame A list tell us something? And we can check the manual. Frame parameters. Window frame parameters. Okay. Basic parameters, position, size, layout. We have border here. How about... Well, let's see here. Border, no. Position, border. Nope. Nope. Border width. Internal border width. Width in pixels of the frame's internal border. See frame geometry. So I guess that is, okay. So I think I understand. So the internal border width is probably like whenever your window manager is drawing windows, it has to draw a frame around them, usually it has to draw a frame around them. So probably what this is doing is saying add some padding to the drawing of the window so that the border can be drawn around it, I'm guessing. So let's jump back out of all of this stuff that I just pulled up. All right. Hold on. There we go. Whoops. Great. I accidentally closed the chat window. Pull that right back. No. Okay, we may have a problem here. Hold on. There we go. Get out of here. Chat.restream.io. Okay. Toggle floating. There we go. Hey, we're back. And now the chat's cleared. All right, so we got 30 minutes left, more or less. So let's see, what do we want to say we have accomplished today? I mean, aside from the fact that we've gotten a pretty good understanding of at least the startup process for EXWM and how it's interacting with the X Windows server through protocol messages, what do we need to know to, or what do we need to do to start being productive and actually do something with this? So if the goal is to try to fix bugs, then understanding generally how the code works is helpful. We do have a sort of an understanding of the lower level code now, how it interacts with the protocol and how the XELB library works to do that. And we've also seen some of the usage of the functions inside of EXWM. So really probably the best thing to do next would be to try to fix a particular issue and see if we can trace through it and find why it's happening, and then maybe experiment with fixes that could resolve that problem. So maybe what we'll do is try to find a particular bug that might be a starting point to look into some of this stuff. And if anybody else has other suggestions on what might be useful to try, I would be happy to hear them. So I wonder if there's any labels here about like good first time issues. What about help wanted? Nope, no help wanted issues. I think there's a lot of help wanted. Some programs not killed properly. The buffer is deleted, but the process continues running in memory. That's interesting. Args out of range when clicking X window during iSearch. If I abort an iSearch in progress in a normal Emacs buffer by clicking on an X window, I get this error in the mini buffer and one of 3 unwanted outcomes. Args out of range. I wonder if this is like, it's trying to pull something from the slots of an object and it can't because it's an empty object or something. All X windows stop responding. Whoa, I don't want to make that happen in my current session. I need to pull up Zephyr and try some of this stuff. So let me look that up really quick. So Zephyr. So if you don't know, Zephyr is a pretty useful tool that allows you to test stuff in X Windows server. It is a server itself, but it can be rendered into another running X session. So it allows you to do development basically. README. I've forgotten what, oh, okay, here we go. So you probably want something like blah. I think I have Zephyr installed already. Let me check. I'm gonna pull over to this screen in a vterm. Yeah, I have Zephyr installed. So if I drop this here, whoa, okay, so it did it already. So I have a little test window. The question is, how do I get stuff to run in there? Ah, okay, that's how. I need to set display. Yep, okay. So now, let's say if I say display :1 Emacs with profile bear. Boom, look at that. So we've got Emacs running inside of this little test window here. But it's a little bit too small. We might have to make it bigger. So I can exit out of that. Whoa, no thanks. We're not going to exit this session. So let's use control. Well, I need to get into care mode. So EXWM toggle input. What do I have that set to? Super I? Okay. Good, that worked. And then I can use super Q to kill that. Cool, all right. So that's something we can do. And we may need a script to launch the stuff. Is video frozen? Anybody else see the video frozen? I'll double check real quick. Maybe it's frozen on Twitch. Wow. Oh, no. Okay, I can hear myself. All right, thanks, Wind Up Boy. Cool. It may have gotten frozen for a second because I did something stupid, but now we're all good. Okay, so now, I said I wanted to try to create a script. Test EXWM.sh. And now we're going to use this Zephyr invocation here. Whoops. Let's put a hashbang here. Bin shell. And don't want to set that up like that. Maybe I can do this. Is that going to work? And then Emacs with profile equals bare. Let's just see what this does. I'm going to set this to something a little bit bigger. How about 1280 by, whoops, by 720. I don't know if this is going to work. This may not actually work. So let's just see what happens. I'll jump over to, whoops. Already active for display 1. Oh, is Zephyr still running? Okay. Okay, so pkill Zephyr. It's finished. Okay, so now let's do that. So yeah, that's what we'll do. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so let me kill this one more time. Okay, all right. So I think I know what I need to do now. So let me say, thanks, Minas Mazar. You're right. Display equals :1, and I do want to set this as a background task. I want to run that, and then after Emacs finishes, we want to pkill Zephyr. Let's try that and see if that helps. Okay, that worked. And now if I use, let me toggle input here. If I use Control X, Control C, then everything kills. Okay, great. So inside of that config, I need to run EXWM and start it up, but I want to load it from the local directory. So what I probably need to do is set up a new Emacs configuration for the purpose of this, probably in Emacs. So in my Emacs profiles.el, I have a few configs here. Let me just clone one of these. I don't know if I need that Emacs load path. Let's leave it anyway though. All right, so here I'm going to dump that. I'm going to say EXWM / test config. It's not the right place to put this, but we're going to do it for now anyway. So EXWM test. Clean that up. And now I will go to that directory. Projects, code, EXWM, test config / init.el. And probably should, let's see, add to list. I think it's right? Yeah, add to list. And it takes List variable, is that a symbol or the variable itself? Probably the variable. So load path, and I'll add expand file name. Go away. Dot slash EXWM. Let's try that. I mean, this is going to give me the wrong thing here, but oh, no, that's right. Okay, good. Let's create the directory. So we're going to add a couple of these. We're going to add XELB too. And I want to make sure that the EXWM that's installed in my system doesn't get picked up also, but maybe we don't have... Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that Emacs load path that I set should do that. So let's require EXWM and then run EXWM init. Let's just see if this works. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll find out really fast. Also, let's set a theme so we don't go blind. What was I using? Deeper blue? T? Okay. Let's set that before we start initializing EXWM. And now let's go back to that vterm and run test EXWM. Oh, okay. I didn't set the right profile yet, but I will do that. And then I'll run over here and set this to EXWM test. I believe I called it that. What was that? Emacs profiles. Yeah, EXWM test. Cool. Let's do this now. What? Wow, that's super slow. Oops, hold on. Obsolete. I probably have the wrong folder path, so let me fix that. In fact, maybe I should just take that part out of the profile, just for the sake of simplicity. I think that's the right place. Go back to vterm, run it again. Still says obsolete. What does that mean? Oh, hold on. There's more stuff here, but it's just obscured because for some reason the events are going so slow. I hope this is not going to be a problem because it seems to be running extremely slowly. Good God. Okay, that's why. It's because there's a million lines printed out into this terminal or this buffer. How bad is it affecting my stream quality at the moment? Can you scroll? Yeah, scroll all the way to the top. Wrong argument type symbol P. You know, that's what I thought. I think it's that add to list. Let's check that out really quick. I'm pretty sure that's a problem. Add low, thank you, to list. Yeah, so it needs to be a symbol. You'd think I should know that, right? Init.yell. It got really angry though. I mean, how many lines of output are needed to complain about the fact that I didn't use a symbol? All right, let's see what happens this time. Slow, slow, slow. Are you finished? Okay, looks like EXWM did load. I can check def custom for EXWM debug fails to specify containing group. Well, I don't care about that, but that is probably a bug that we can fix. Actually, I should probably set Zephyr up to be... Okay, so there is a value there, great. I should probably set Zephyr up to automatically turn into care mode in EXWM on my side so that I I can easily press key bindings inside of here. And this is way too small, obviously, for people watching the stream, so I need to find a way to bump the size up on all this too. Maybe I can run XRDB or something to set the DPI. Set DPI with XRDB. I think that's what I used in the past. I don't want to use an X resources file. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I can actually do that. So if I had an X resources file with a specific DPI, I could probably set it that way. So let's try this really quickly. So what we're doing here is just getting some basic setup for future testing purposes. This is going to be really helpful for when we're trying to do iterative development and fixing things. And if I find a good workflow for this, I'll try to make it available to other people to use. So inside of the EXWM, well, is it what, test config folder? Test config. I'll say .x resources. X resources. There we go. Let's say 200 for now. See ya, Glenn. Thanks for joining. And then in this script, what I'll do is say display equals 1. I probably should just like set that variable, set the environment variable in the script, but let's just do this for now. XRDB. I believe I have that program installed. Let's merge it. That's under test config, I think. Is that the right one? Test config, yep. All right, we can try that this time and see if that makes it any easier to read. Did not do anything. Sure does take a long time to start up though. All right, so what I'll do then is let's increase the size of the screen for one thing. So I don't think this is going to be enough because my resolution is already pretty big on this display. Okay, that's not so bad so long as I can get the font bigger. XRDB query all. Let's actually check this too and see if it actually worked. So, oh. No applicable method. I don't know what I did wrong there. Whoops. Let's run eShell inside of this session. First of all, we're going to echo display. Okay, that's right. And then XRDB, what was it? Query all. Okay, so let's try this. XRDB. This probably won't work at this point. Merge test config .x resources. Query all. Okay, so it didn't get loaded correctly, so maybe it's just a path issue. So I think before Windows start drawing, that needs to be loaded correctly. Test config /.x resources. Is this a window manager in a window manager? Yeah, it is. David Will /project /code /EXWM /test config. Let's try that instead. I didn't see any error. Come on, man. Maybe that's what's happening, actually. Does display work with XRDB? Okay, so I need to use dash display. That makes sense. maybe it doesn't actually pick up the test EXWM. Maybe it doesn't actually pick up the display variable. So instead of doing this, I'll put that here. Display, and I think I can just use :1 for that. Is that right? Should be right. I'm assuming that nothing here before the colon means localhost, so we'll give it a shot and see if it works. Nope. That's interesting. Well, that's something I can probably figure out on my own after this. But the good news is that we can get an EXWM session running inside of Zephyr for testing purposes. It may be a little bit slow to start up, but we can... Let's see. Whoops. EXWM init. What I want to do is see if it's pulling it from the right place. Let's click that. What folder path is this in? Oh, come on, man. Okay, we'll look at the default directory variable. Nope, that is not the right EXWM. That's actually the one that's installed via Geeks. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more surgery on this. Exit that. I think if I go back to my profiles, if I undo that change that I did, should have actually checked to see which path it's using. It's really nasty to use this path, by the way. Maybe if I look at... Nah, that's not going to work. What I want is the one that's installed in my local profile. So .geeks extra profiles /emacs share Emacs 28050 Lisp. Can I copy this path? Let's see, is there like a yank or something? An embark? Or insert? I'm sure it's right in front of my face. How about that? I'll clean this up a little bit. Just to make sure I'm going to use the correct version of this. In fact, I should probably fix the rest of these at the same time, because this is all going to be busted. Oh no, I don't want to use that actually, because that's where all the packages are. I want to use the one at the system level, which is kind of risky. Let's just try it anyway and see if it works. So to be clear what I'm doing, I'm trying to avoid having, yeah, it's still happening. I'm trying to avoid having my personal profile Emacs packages from Geeks being loaded up in the session so it doesn't pull the wrong EXWM. But obviously that's what's happening. So I think what I need to do is set the set the Emacs load path environment variable on the shell instead. I wonder if that path still exists. Okay, that does exist. That's good. So what I'll do is go into the test file here. This is really only necessary for me and my situation. So Emacs load path equals that. Cool. Now let's go back to vterm. Try to run that one more time. Okay. File is missing. Cannot open load file. No such file or directory. That sounds right. So now we're... I'm probably not setting the load path correctly. I'm trying to avoid setting the whole project path. But maybe this is just wrong. What if I set something more explicit? Like if I do this... This may work, this may not work. We're about to find out. And pretty sure I'm setting that in the right place. So load path, yeah, it's just a list of paths. Okay, so back to vterm. Try to run it one more time. Scanning the load path with way too many folders, I think is what's happening here. We'll see if it cooperates. Okay, so it did work. I may have to move those two directories into a subfolder so that it doesn't cause me trouble, but Control H, Control F, whoops, Control H, Control F. I want to look at what is going on? I think it's not showing the right, it's not showing the mode line at all for some reason. Control H, F, EXWM init, coming from EXWM.el. And that is coming from, oh God. Yeah, that's coming from the right place. So at least that's happening correctly. All right. So that is a little bit worrisome that the mode line isn't showing up now. I don't know if that's something with the local build that I have. I'm trying to exit. Let's try this one more time. Because if it doesn't pick up the right geometry and size the window correctly, then that could be a problem for testing. Yeah, it started in the right place, but then it moved. Huh. And I can't even see the echo area or the mini buffer to type anything in, so I'm totally blind right now. Can I resize this window? No. I wonder if there's like a newer change that caused this problem, or if it's something about running it from. Let's try this. Temporarily, I'm going to take this load path thing off. And comment that out. Let's go back and try it one more time. I'm trying to see if loading the compiled EXWM is going to show the mode line correctly, because if that's the case, then something about the local clone of the code is not working. I don't think I changed anything there. Okay, so I'm not certain what that means. I would probably have to look at the commit history. All right, let's see. Wind Up Boy says structure a chroot, maybe, or a Docker file. Mode line is probably just below the visible window. Yeah, I don't know why it's not setting itself up correctly. Ramses says that happened to me with xmonad not showing the mode line. So something about that particular clone of the code is causing a problem, and I don't know if it has to do with like it not being byte compiled or natively compiled or something like that. It's kind of hard to diagnose it when I can't see the echo area or the mini buffer. Projects code, EXWM. Let's just take a look at, yeah, I have no changes here other than the stuff. Apparently, but this bug hunt is me. Wow, how long ago was that? That was August 31st of 2019. So apparently I was looking at bugs in the EXWM then. Okay. Xinit RC, huh? Interesting. Is this like a test script? I don't think I did that. Yeah, that's part of the repo. Okay, so make button events working with winner mode. Is that the last commit that was actually on the EXWM repo? EXWM. Yes, okay. Fix full screen states. I don't see anything here that jumps out at me as being a problem. Fix moving Emacs frames. So can't think of a good way to deal with that problem at the moment, but it may be something I can experiment with. I definitely want to try to set up the DPI correctly. So let's see. Xinit set DPI. Let's try it that way. Or how about this? Zephyr set DPI. That's probably a better way to ask for it. Oh, is there actually an option for that? Well, geez. Let's try that. Felipe says, try resetting to an actual git tag. If it works fine, you can rely on git bisect. Yeah, you're right about that. So let's actually check. Where did the last tag get created? So bump version to 24. However, oh, I didn't fetch the tags yet. Let's see. Fetch -t origin. The origin may be my fork. Fetch -t elsewhere upstream. Okay, interesting. So the version was bumped to 0.24, but the last tag was 23, and that was down here. Interesting. So that, you may be right about that, Felipe. Maybe what happened is that the tag that I'm using, so let's actually check, whoops. Let's check Geeks. What version of EXWM am I using in Geeks? Let it take its time to set up the REPL. Come on, EXWM 24. Well, there were a couple changes that happened after the bump to 24. A couple of these things here. I wonder if this full screen states thing is the problem. In fact, let's check the package and what commit are we looking at? It's just 024. Is there actually a tag on the repo for that? I did not see one. 3 releases. There's just a tag and not a release? No. Where's the frickin' 0.24? Oh, they published it to ELPA, but it's not on the, it's not tagged in the Git repo. That's fantastic. Anyway, okay. So we spent 2 hours on this today. I feel like we made some progress. At least getting familiar with the basics of the code base, the basics of some of the concepts we need to learn for window management in the X window system. I know things now that I didn't know before, which is good. That's a good sign. And we also got a sort of a basic environment set up to make it possible to develop this more in the future, in future streams. So I hope that this was interesting. I don't know if it was interesting. Definitely let me know either in the chat or in the comments if you think this is worthwhile and maybe you want to see me do it again. Because, like I said, I didn't prepare at all for this, but I think it went pretty well. So we could try to do this once a week and see what kind of progress we can make towards learning more about the EXWM code base, fixing bugs there, and then also at some point experimenting with some of the other things I said in the stream last Friday about, you know, maybe experimenting with new window manager ideas, or maybe taking some inspiration from things like DWM, etc., and maybe trying to make a new type of window manager core for Emacs. Now, that obviously can't be done now because I still don't know enough about window management yet, but through looking at the EXWM code and trying to fix some bugs, I probably will learn some more things, and I think we all will learn more about it too. So I think it's kind of worthwhile. So let me know what you think. I had fun. I don't know, it was kind of cool to just jump through all this code and try to figure out what all of it does. So yeah, we'll probably try it again based on what kind of feedback I get. I think we had more people in Twitch today than usual too, which is great. Usually the viewership on Twitch is kind of low. I'm still trying to decide whether Twitch makes sense. Many of the people who watch my channel seem to be pretty comfortable using YouTube. So also any thoughts there would be helpful. So yeah, we're still going to do a stream on Friday. I don't know what it's going to be about yet. I also meant to get a video out this week, but I don't think it's going to happen now because I have way too much other stuff going on. I've got the video like halfway written, but didn't have time to record it. So we'll probably do that next week. But yeah, see us back here on Friday for another stream. And also, as Nightbot keeps helpfully reminding people, we have the store open now in case you haven't seen that yet. Some pretty cool stuff there. All right, thanks everybody for being here today. I appreciate all the interaction and feedback and the tips from the people in the chat. That's always one of the best parts of this, is like the people giving help and pointers, because there's a lot of smart people in the System Crafters community, and it's cool to have us sort of collectively working on all this stuff together. All right, so like I said, definitely contribute to the notes if you want to. I'm going to try to get these checked in right now and add it as a link to the show notes, and then next time we'll pick up from where we left off and try to start fixing some EXWM bug. If you have suggestions on that too, definitely leave those in the comments or let me know on IRC or Discord. All right, folks, that's enough for one day. So hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you on Friday. Thanks a lot. Happy hacking.